Welcome to the KD Report. Last week, President Trump surprised the world when he unilaterally ordered 59 Tomahawk missiles be launched into Syria after reports emerged that a chemical attack took place inside the civil war-plagued country.
No child of God should ever suffer such horror. Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched.
This military action will likely lead to three outcomes. 1. The strike could worsen the fighting inside Syria. 2. Our enemies, including terror groups, may think the strikes were meaningless, emotional, or largely symbolic. 3. What will Syria's Russian ally do? Will Putin let it slide, or will he view the action as weak and instruct his generals the weather is clear and continue his move west towards Odessa? But do we really know who committed the heinous chemical attack? A former British ambassador to Syria told the BBC.
It's a statement, a misstatement of non-fact. We don't know. What's needed is an investigation. Because there are two possibilities for what happened. One is the American version, that Assad dropped chemical weapons on this locality. The other version is that an ordinary bomb was dropped and it hit a munitions dump. The jihadis were storing chemical weapons. We don't know which of these two possibilities is the correct one. Remember the run-up to Iraq. The experts, the intelligence agencies, the politicians were convinced that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. They produced reams of evidence, photographs, diagrams. It was all wrong. Based on previous experience, including Iraq, we can see that we cannot take at face value what the so-called intelligence experts tell us, not when they have an agenda.
What are the consequences?
Because Trump has just given the jihadis 1,000 reasons to stage fake flag operations, seeing how successful and how easy it is with a gullible media to provoke the West into intemperate reactions. They will very likely stage an operation similar to what they did, and this was documented by the United Nations in August last year. They mounted a chlorine gas attack on civilians, and they tried to make it look like it was a regime operation. This, mark my words, you're hearing it here, and it will happen, and we'll get all the warmongers coming to tell us that Assad is defying us and we must go in more heavily into Syria. This will be fake flag.
However, many inside Syria were glad to see President Assad hit by the U.S. and asked the U.S. to do more.
Due respect, this is hypocrisy. If you really care, help us stay in our country. We don't want to become refugees. We want to stay in our country. Help us establish safe zones. Help us stay safe in our country.
After 8 years of no action under President Obama, many lawmakers are upset that President Trump didn't come to them and ask for authorization, especially when regime change is on the table. They are also questioning how the U.S. determined after 2 days that the Assad regime is responsible for the gas attack.
I believe, what you believe or others believe is irrelevant. What matters here is the evidence and the facts. If President Assad is found to be responsible after an independent investigation for these horrific chemical weapons attacks, I'll be the first one to denounce him, to call him a war criminal, and to call for his prosecution, the International Criminal Court. Make sure that those consequences are there. But the key is now, with President Trump's reckless military strikes last night, it flew directly in the face of the action that the UN was working on at that time to launch an independent investigation, to find out exactly what the facts are who was involved and who was responsible so that the appropriate consequences could be levied. Whether the president or the Pentagon or the Secretary of State says that they have the evidence, the fact remains that they have not brought that evidence before Congress, they have not brought that evidence before the American people, and they have not sought authorization from Congress to launch this military attack on another country. Has been waging this war, this regime change war now for years, covertly through the CIA to overthrow the Syrian government. The result of this has been the suffering of the Syrian people, hundreds of thousands of people dead, millions of refugees, and the strengthening of terrorist groups in Syria like al-Qaeda and ISIS, whose goal is to overthrow the Syrian government.
Congresswoman Gabbard also pointed out that the U.S. may be arming terrorists.
Support intelligence and other types of both direct and indirect support to armed militants within Syria who are working directly with al-Qaeda, who are allied with terrorist groups like al-Qaeda towards this end of overthrowing the Syrian government.
She also proposes action and has introduced
the Stop Arming Terrorists bill that would put an end to this madness by prohibiting American taxpayer dollars from paying for this support, for paying for this counterproductive regime change war.
So what's the end game? Officials say the bombs hit a hospital in an area where the Al-Nusra Front, an al-Qaeda affiliate, operates. Is this retaliatory strike a one-off, or is President Trump going to break his campaign promise to disengage with the Middle East? Thanks for joining me today. For more information on this story and others, please visit thekatiereport.com. And remember, news is more than a soundbite.